Hey everybody, welcome back to the Creekcast. Today on episode 8, we have a very important guest, Ann Makosinski, basically an inventor. She won the Google Science Fair in 2014. She's made some really great inventions that we'll mention later on in the podcast. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ann Makosinski. I'm a 23-year-old inventor, student, writer, creative person. I'm not quite sure what to call myself, but yes, thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you for coming, actually.
It's
really
kind of
for us.
surprising.
Oh, no worries at all. Happy to be here.
So, basically in our school this week we have STEM week, which kind of blends in perfectly with a guest such as yourself, because, I mean, you're basically what embodies STEM. So we're just going to talk about your achievements, a bit of your story, and that's really
Just
about
tell
it.
us about you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
so
me?
yeah.
You go. Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, yeah.
Going back to my childhood, my first toy was a box of transistors and other electronic parts. And from there, because I wasn't given many conventional toys, I would take my hot glue gun and garbage from around the house and piece together my very first inventions, which of course never worked. But the idea of taking the resources around me and piecing them together to make something better kind of just came very naturally, out of necessity, basically, of need for entertainment. And I just had a very odd childhood generally compared to what my other friends were doing. I wasn't allowed television, so I would watch Gilbert and Sullivan operas on the weekends, and I was raised on silent films from the 1920s. So I was just a very outdated child, and I probably still am. But I really value that experience. And because I love talking about my inventions so much to my parents and tinkering and just taking whatever I could find apart, my parents suggested that I join the local science fair when I was in grade 6. And so for my grade 6 to grade 12 years, I ended up doing 10 science fairs, all in the area and all my projects were in the area of alternative energy harvesting, which is harvesting energy that's always around us, but we don't necessarily take advantage of regularly. Do you want me to continue, or did you want to ask a question? Or
No, that's perfect. I think
that's
now,
a good overview.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
That's perfect. I think now it's a good time to end the intro of this episode for now, and we can roll back into our ad break for now. We'll be right back. Sit tight and keep listening, because next we're going to ask some really interesting questions and know more about STEM in general. So here we go.
Hey you, yes you, are you a fan of the Creekcast? Do you ever wonder how we make the Creekcast? It's very straightforward. Anchor is the #1 podcasting site, and that's right, you're going to hear us in every episode until we reach that big ad revenue in order to make big donations. Anchor is the place to go. It is the #1 podcasting site and application. I mean, you can make money from it, distribute it. All you fellow listeners, you should already know about this. So it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. What are you waiting for? Come on, do it. Do it. I know you want to do it. Go get Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and get started, baby.
So, welcome back from our little ad break. Thanks again to Anchor for sponsoring us and making this podcast possible. Right now, we're moving to a really significant story. Is how did you develop the hollow flashlight? And can you tell us what it is?
Well, I'd been dabbling in alternative energy harvesting for the previous years when I was doing my science fair projects, and I'm half Filipino. So I have some friends back in the Philippines, and one of them had written to me from an internet cafe and said, like, hey, I failed my grade in school this year. And I was like, oh, what happened? And she said, oh, well, you know, like my family can't afford electricity, so I have no light to study with at night. So I couldn't see my notes, and that's why I failed. And I was so shocked that a girl just like me, just my age, just somewhere else around the world, didn't have something as simple as light. So I decided to base my science fair project around her problem that year, and I ended up creating a flashlight that wouldn't require any batteries, which ended up being the hollow flashlight, a flashlight that runs off the heat of the human hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even something that I could ever imagine doing.
Yeah,
so
it's very simple. I was 15 when I made it.
wow.
Wow.
But it was very simple, and I genuinely didn't think it was that exciting, and then people got very excited about it. Very shocking and nice, I guess. Yeah.
So was that kind of like an invention that you kind of didn't even think of was a big deal, and it was just something you put under the carpet and it became this big thing, or how did that go?
Well, what happened is I went to my local science fair in Vancouver Island, where I grew up, with my project. I got second place. Then I went to the Canada-wide science fair. Oh, did I? Yes, I did. I went. Did I? I can't even remember. Yes, I did. I went to the Canada-wide science fair with the flashlight, won some stuff there, and then my teacher, someone had told me about this Google Science Fair, which I had to apply online. And I forgot that the Google Science Fair existed, of course, as any good teenager should. And then the night of the deadline, I was like, oh crap, I should apply. So my dad quickly filmed a video of me talking about the project, because that was part of the requirements to send in. And I posted on YouTube. I submitted my report that I already pre-written for my previous science fairs, forgot about it, and then heard that I was one of the 90 regional finalists around the world to get selected. And then I was selected as one of the 15 finalists that would actually get to go to Google's headquarters in Mountain View. And that I did in the beginning of my grade 11 year. And that changed my life, because just going there was incredible. But then I also ended up winning. And this highly embarrassing video I had filmed in my living room talking about the flashlight went viral. And many things happened after that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great. That's like how such a simple invention, in your words, because I still find it really amazing, can change something. Like, wow. That actually brings us to our next point, is how can inventions, not necessarily like high-tech stuff, but like stuff that any teenager could make, can change the climate crisis?
Totally. I mean, I think in general, if you look around you, you'll see a lot of problems that your parents, your friends, your family, caregivers, your community, your town, your city, maybe even your country faces. And I truly believe, at least in the experience of making my flashlight, I made it for my one friend. And then it ended up snowballing and has the potential to help millions of people around the world who don't have light. So I think it can be kind of daunting sometimes to think, how can I solve climate change, the climate crisis, because it's such a huge issue. But if you go specific and you pinpoint one issue that's part of the climate crisis that you can solve, that can end up having a much bigger impact than you originally envisioned. And inventing, I believe, doing is always better than just speaking about it, in my opinion. So I personally believe I see a concrete difference when somebody makes something, makes a solution, rather than talks about what we have to do and then nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, very well said. I think that's kind of part of the thing. A lot of the time, it's also maybe a bit psychological that we think that we can't really do things with our environment. But I mean, you proved like just something so simple like the flashlight. I mean, it's a step in the right direction for a teenager to be able to do that. It's very impressive, honestly.
I mean, anybody can make a difference. I think the educational system has kind of trained us to think, okay, once we're out of high school, at least we have that. Maybe now I can make a difference. But then we enter university, if we're lucky, or college, and we go, oh, well, now I have to get my degree before I can make any impact on the world. and so forth and so forth. And I really think it's best just to disregard it, no matter what age or where you come from. You can make a positive difference in someone else's life if you really set your heart on it and it's something you truly want to do.
Yeah, agreed. Like we need to focus on contributing to the whole instead of thinking we can take it all on our own.
Yeah. Which, I mean, kind of leads to maybe some advice that could help some people, like what really makes a great inventor. I mean, if I dare say, I would consider you a great inventor because you can use these sort of resources to make something like a flashlight that runs on human heat. So, I mean, what's something that makes a great inventor?
What makes a great inventor? It's a good question. I think someone who's very curious and very imaginative. I'm not by any means saying that I'm a great inventor or anything, but these are just the traits that I've noticed or other people have pointed out about me, is I'm kind of always imagining or daydreaming or coming up with my own reality or things that I want to make or characters or worlds, whatever that is. So just someone who's very creative, imaginative, open-minded. I think as adults, when we have cool ideas, we always shut them down pretty quick because we're like, oh, that would take so much work and I need this and this. I don't have enough money, resources, whatever it is. Or that's not realistic. And I think it's important just to write the idea down or sketch it when it comes to you and be open-minded to it no matter what. What else makes a great inventor? Just someone who's inquisitive and curious about the world around them, I think, and has some sort of need or impetus to want to solve problems.
Right. So kind of, I mean, you already talked about the hollow flashlight and the process behind that and kind of that experience. And we would like to know also about the e-mug, what it is and how the same thing, really, the story and what it kind of led to and the whole experience.
Yeah, so the Edrink was my last science fair project I did in grade 12 before I graduated high school. It kind of came out of two of my friends' problems that I noticed. One was that their coffee was always taking too long to cool down, and two was that their phones are always running out of battery. So the Edrink kind of worked on the same thermoelectric principles as the flashlight, and it's basically a coffee mug that harvests the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity. So eventually, if you drink a lot of coffee, you can give your phone a boost of energy. And yeah, so I went to the Intel Science Fair with that, and then I went on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon with that one, which was fun. And I did both of those also with the flashlight. And yeah, that was kind of a fun last hurrah in the science fair world. And yeah, just like a fun project to do overall.
So was that your final science fair?
Yeah. I mean, science fairs are usually only for high school and middle school kids, so yes.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah, really, really interesting, actually. So that actually brings us to our next point. It's about a really important aspect of STEM and a big problem right now is that there's a lack of women participation in STEM based on different factors. So what's your position in that, or what do you have to say?
Good question. I think I do think women in STEM is really important, and you definitely need to get more youth in general, but also young women interested in the sciences and seeing how their interests could be applied to it. I do personally love STEAM a little better, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, because I think sciences and arts actually bridge together really well. And kind of the best products and inventions like the iPhone, things like that, are kind of a combination of science and art, not just science and tech. And I think if we bring the arts into the sciences more, at least in education, early on in middle school, even junior school for kids, that can hopefully open up that can hopefully open it up to a wider audience of young girls that may have interests in the arts or hobbies, but they're not sure how they can bring that into the sciences, or they don't really see themselves in a scientist position. I also think in the entertainment industry, a lot needs to be done about the representation of scientists or people interested in tech, because for so long, at least for me growing up, my I thought like, oh, if people think that I do science fair projects, they're going to think like I'm a character from the Big Bang Theory, which was not the case at all. So we need more positive and more interesting, I think, representations of people who love science instead of these kind of old nerd stereotypes that we still see, unfortunately, still now on screen.
Yeah, like high school football humor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, like with the involvement of arts in STEM, so instead making it STEAM, it's kind of what you related to with what makes a great inventor, which is creativity. And I mean, as an artist, you require a lot of creativity, so it's probably a great medium to kind of shift into.
Totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, we wanted to touch a little bit on kind of your growing up and kind of some questions very heavily based on you and your work. So something that really stood out to me was kind of the way you were educated from an early age and the way you were brought up. So what was the impact your parents had on you?
My parents were quite strict, and my dad came from, he was born in Poland right during World War II. He's quite old. And then my mom came from a very tiny village in the Philippines, and she immigrated to Canada basically when she married my dad. So they both had very kind of limited resources in their childhoods. And I think, which is interesting because usually I think when a parent goes through that, they're like, I didn't have a lot when I was a kid, so I want to give my child everything. But my parents saw it as when they had less, they were forced to be more creative with what they did have as a kid. So when they were raising me, it was kind of, okay, let's actually give Anne less toys because that will force her to be more creative with whatever's around her and to hopefully grow her imagination, which is thankfully what happened. But, they were very strict. I wasn't allowed a smartphone until I was 18, 19. The Wi-Fi turned off before, I think when I was in high school, it was like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. Definitely an eclectic childhood, and my dad was always eating all these healthy, nutritional yeasts and powders and seaweed and all these disgusting things you hate as a kid. But I think they made my metabolism good then, so now I can eat trash. So,
so there's benefits.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that sounds great. Actually, like it goes to show how those little things that you do with your children actually come to fruition. Like it's not just phones bad, toys bad. There's actually like deeper thought into it. Like, oh, let's expand her creativity.
Yeah, as a child, you definitely. I mean, well, I don't know. Maybe some children won't really have a problem with it, but others will be seeing the outside of their community and see that everybody really has smartphones and has all these toys, and it might be like, why don't I get that?
Of course, yeah.
So there's also another thing that we want to touch on, and is a really big part of everyone, like whether you like it or not, is your nationality and your culture. How do you think both those factors influenced you?
Right. Well, I grew up in Canada, but my mom was Filipino, my dad was Polish, like I said. I went to Polish language school every Saturday morning, and I never really felt like I fit in because I was half Asian and everyone else was like pure white, and spoke Polish at home. Being Canadian kind of, and growing up on the West Coast on an island, everyone is like super hippie, which is cool. And I think that kind of influenced me to also like want to preserve the earth and enjoy nature and water and how beautiful the land is. I became obsessed with bugs and insects because they were just all around me everywhere. It's interesting being Hapa, which is like another word for half Asian. There are a lot of Asian communities on the west coast of Canada that have immigrated, so it was actually very common for there to be a lot of half Asian kids in my school and in my grade, which I was lucky for. So I felt less alienated that way. But yeah, I'm not quite sure how exactly that influenced me, but yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
actually
I mean,
really interesting how like such factors can change the way you are, like something that you don't have control over. Like, oh, you're born here. That's it. That's it. No do-overs, no chances. But
yeah, and you also had like a blend of like Polish and Filipino and Canadian, so you kind of got to see the difference in three sorts of cultures and worlds, which is kind of, I mean, that's
well. I mean, Canadian culture, whatever that is so young. I mean, the country celebrated its supposed 150th anniversary a few years ago. So compared to like Europe, it has way less history. Or at least, but I think in general in Canada, everyone's nicer to you on the street than in other places, you could say. And I grew up in a very small town where you kind of like, you go downtown and you'll see someone from your high school, inevitably.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of leading on with that, you already mentioned a bit about how growing up without toys and all this kind of formed a bit of your creativity and your way to manipulate the objects around you. So how is your creative process? Like, is it still just a bunch of widgets and you just kind of go with it and see what comes out? Or is there a set creative process?
I don't know if I have a set creative process, because I am kind of someone who has interests in so many different things that my creative process, whatever that is quite scattered. And I often am picking up one project and then remember, oh, I really wanted to do this, and then I start that and then I forget about that and go on to the next one. If anything, my creative process, or what I hope it to be, is just where I finish something. But I don't know, I always carry around a notebook and a pen when I go out in my purse, so I can always write down ideas or start drawing or writing. I come up with my best ideas when I'm in social situations and starting to zone out. I'm definitely someone who's very much like, I need to be productive with my time as much as possible. So that's why I'll often bring out my notebook when I'm like at dinner or over at someone's house and people are just chatting and I'm like, I could be doing something right now. Which is perhaps slightly rude of me, but I've kind of, now that I don't go out with my parents anymore, I'm just kind of like, I don't need to be as polite. I can still pull out my notebook and write something down. If anything, I think my parents kind of taught me that, because whenever we would go to a restaurant when I was a kid, my dad would grab the napkin of whatever that was on the table and he would just start drawing ideas. So I think I just picked that habit from him and embraced it. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. That's really nice, actually.
Yeah, it's so basically you just like go into normal scenarios and you grab like ideas from everything you see, kind of, in a way.
Yeah, or if I'm zoning out and I've been mulling about something in my mind, it'll come up usually at that point.
Yeah, that's how the best ideas come to fruition.
Totally.
So, speaking of inventing, these segues are on fire right now, actually. So, do you think inventing comes natural to people, or is it something that only anyone can get into, or just something that specific types of people are already disposed to do?
I think inventing should come naturally to everyone, and I think it does when you're a kid and have to solve problems. You're just generally more open-minded, more creative. And I think as adults, a lot of us tend to shut that part of ourselves down, or we utilize it in different ways in our work, and it doesn't become a thing that's fun anymore, kind of solving problems, because it feels like a problem that you need to do for work. But I think we are all natural innovators at heart. I mean, to survive since kind of like caveman era, we've had to invent and be creative to live. And now if we are lucky enough, we are kind of, at least I am in a position of like, I don't need to invent or be that creative when it comes to my survival most of the time, but I can invent solutions for other people or things that I see or envision or dream about.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, kind of with the whole idea of your kind of way of inventing and seeing the world, kind of leads on to like our exterior factors in like affecting the way we can actually invent, because maybe having all these devices and having all these distractions constantly around us like kind of suppress the need to invent and our creativity.
Like we're so used to have like everything handed to us that now like the creative juices are just not needed as much. So
totally. I mean, now if we have an issue, we can just go order a solution online. And I mean, it's really easy to do that, but I do encourage people also to try and be a little creative and try and solve their own problems when they come up, instead of falling into kind of a more consumeristic attitude and being like, it's okay, I'll just buy a new one, instead of trying to fix this or mend this, whatever it may be.
Yeah, like you could say that now, like yesterday, things were easier to invent since they weren't invented now. So I think I could have invented the wheel or a chair. Right now, things are like much more difficult to like get into reality. And as we said, like as we said, like we tend to focus on bigger problems. Like the problems of yesterday were so, I don't want to say simple, I don't want to discredit like great inventors, but it could be tackled by like 2 or 3 persons. But now, like they're so big, like let's say climate change, that no like pair of people could ever amount to anything.
So I think it's best almost to have groups of it's best to have smaller groups of people working on all these small issues around the world, and then hopefully with all these solutions coming together, we can help negate or at least slow down global warming.
And I mean, I think that kind of like in your own personal life, as you've kind of described it, you don't really plan out many inventions or projects, but in the future, do you like see any big ideas or big concepts that you would like to do, like as I guess goals in a way?
Oh gosh, I don't know yet. I mean, I spent the past how long? I spent like 2 years working and pitching these line of children's toys that ran off of green energy, that I was really excited for and very proud of, and I hoped those were going to make a decent impact. But now I don't know if some how can I say this? Some stuff came up and I can't make them anymore, which is not fun, but it's okay because I still have them in my portfolio and I'm still proud of that experience.
They'll come up again, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. But I'm not sure yet. I definitely want to make and put the flashlight on the market at some point soon, or make it more accessible for kids or young teenagers who are tinkerers and want to learn. So I hope that'll be something that I pursue in the next year or two. But it's kind of been an ongoing struggle, and it's so hard to get the flashlight on the market because its brightness is not comparable to battery run flashlights, which at the end of the day, brightness is very important when it comes to this. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure yet. I don't have like a big thing that I've been dreaming about, but I just want to release the flashlight and my patented technology in some way, in some form in the future.
So going back to, I think you said that you were raised without a phone, like you didn't have one until 18 years old. Do you still live without a phone, or do you own one? Like, do you use it like in your everyday life?
Right. I have a phone now. I mean, when I gave this TEDx talk called Why I Don't Own a Smartphone, and it's true, then I had a flip phone and life was free and beautiful. And then I started traveling so much for public speaking back when we could travel. Haha. And my parents were very overprotective, but in a great way. We're like, we don't know where you are, and you cannot contact us on your flip phone that only works in Canada. So like, please get us something that can connect to the internet easily when you're like in airports. So I got a smartphone. And when I did this thing with Google Pixel, I did this whole ad thing with them. So that was really fun. Now I own a smartphone. I'm right now, actually, you've caught me. I'm trying to experiment with this new minimalist phone called the Light phone. So I've put my SIM card in there, and the only functions that this Light phone has is it can call, text, but it's very hard to text on it, and you can download music onto it, and that is it. So I've just told all my friends not to text me. Call me if you want. And then I have my smartphone for like Instagram, which is kind of part of my job now, unfortunately, and da-da-da. So, so it's been an interesting process. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I think it's awful. If I could be completely off it, but still have representation of myself online, I would. But at this moment, I do not have like a separate social media person to handle all of that for me. So I am sucked into the horrible world of Instagram and things like that. But I try and have a healthier relationship with it every single day and educate myself on how advertising on social media is influencing us and how they're collecting our data. All that is quite terrifying. So I still stand by that life would be better with a flip phone, but with my work and my job, it's definitely kind of necessary at the moment that I have a smartphone.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the TED Talk when we were like researching for this episode, and
cool.
I mean that was obviously like a while back, and in that short period of time, I feel like, I mean, like with what you're doing, for example, it's just become a necessity to be able to have social media and kind of put yourself out there. Because, I mean, if I remember correctly, it was like 2014 around there. So it's different times, which is crazy because it seems like yesterday.
Totally. It's very difficult. Sorry, no, it's not difficult. It was definitely difficult not having a smartphone when I was in high school. And I was just like forced to talk to people when they were all on their phones. But I'm grateful for having a smartphone now, because there definitely have been situations or when I'm traveling that I'm like, thank God I have data and like a working thing, so I don't feel completely alone or not know what's going on. But yeah, definitely I do long to return one day to life without social media, but I haven't been able to fully tear myself away from it just yet.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Like
and unfortunately, you know, if I want to work with a brand or say I want to host a TV show or write a book now, they look at your social media numbers, which is so stupid, because that is no measure of talent. There's so many people on Instagram who have no talent whatsoever and have millions of followers. So it's kind of hard, but it is unfortunate but real that I need to have, you know, some sort of representation of myself online.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's hard, and I honestly don't see that aspect of life going away anytime soon. I think social media is here to stay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So the best way to learn is kind of how to live with it, how to adapt to it in some way.
I think our stance right now is to try to make a positive environment. Like one of the main ways that we reach out to people and just in general try to communicate with our podcast is through Instagram, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that without Instagram, we wouldn't be that big.
Like 40 followers big.
Yeah, I mean. So I think we right now, it sucks, and the world will be better without so much clutter. But now it's our responsibility to try to make it a better place for anyone.
To make it a more positive and actually kind of useful situation, because it has kind of turned into something very toxic at times, and it can be very dangerous for many people. And I mean, things like misinformation, like it just leads into so many issues.
Totally. Agreed.
So yeah, a little bit of a rant and a tangent there, but it's
It's
okay.
okay.
So I think it's important to touch on something like an influence in your life, and I mean, somebody so creative as you must have had an influence. So I mean, it can be a person or anything really that influenced your life to kind of be where you are right now.
Right. I saw your next question as biggest inspiration. I'm just gonna combine those two because
Yeah.
they're similar.
Yeah.
So for me, I've had a lot of obsessions with different people while I was growing up, starting when I was in sixth grade. I became obsessed with Harry Houdini, the magician and escape artist. So I watched all his films, read all his books, learned
Yeah.
magic tricks, everything like that, put his picture everywhere. So I became kind of obsessed with different people in history. And I think looking back on it now, there's probably some part of me that wants to have a little bit of them in my soul, in my spirit, in what I do. And I've always really admired people in history who really felt so passionately about whatever they pursue and they do it for their entire life. So, I was obsessed with Harry Houdini and then the dancers from the 30s, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Then it was this Sherlock Holmes actor, Basil Rathbone. Then it was this opera singer, Piat Pichalla. Then it was like the Brazilian South American entertainer Carmen Miranda. It was all these different kinds of people that were mainly kind of old Hollywood, but there was something kind of magical about them. Then for quite a while till now, I've loved Elvis Presley, and then the actress Anne Margaret, and Mel Brooks, the entertainer, writer, actor, director, Charlie Chaplin, people like that. So just really creative people that are really passionate
Yeah.
about what they love to do and just do it all the time and do it all themselves, along with a great team of people that are very helpful. Those are kind of the biggest influences and inspirations for me.
Yeah, it feels very noticeable, like the impact that kind of the 30s, 40s, 20s had on you as a person and on your whole kind of mindset and view of the world. It's something that, I mean, I don't know you, Huerta, but I hadn't really come across a person which like such a passion for the 30s and 20s.
Yeah, not really. Everyone's stuck in the present, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we need to
I
appreciate
should
the
be
past.
more present. I'm off in my dream world all the time. So
Well, those are where those bright ideas come from. So
Yeah.
maybe not such a bad thing.
true. Hopefully.
Yeah. So yeah, we can move to our next question. So one experience that changed you on the world, in general, just something that happened that changed you.
Back in 2017 during the summer, I was really lucky to join this Arctic expedition that was celebrating Canada's 150th birthday. So I joined the Arctic. Oh my god, there's a spider on the wall. Oh, wait, is it? Sorry. Oh no, it's just a weird mark on the wall. Never mind. Okay.
I'm leaving that.
Anyways, so yeah, I went on this icebreaker ship for 2 weeks. We sailed through the Northwest Passage, which is right on the tip near the North Pole, basically, in Canada. And I was on this ship with a whole group of strangers that I didn't know. I think I was 18 at the time or 19. Wow. And I must have been 19. And it was just an incredible experience. And the north part of Canada is so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. And every day we would stop the ship and go out on these tinier boats to whatever land was nearby. And we stopped at these communities of Inuit people that sometimes had less than like 100 people living in a town. And it was just an incredible experience. And then one day it was really sunny. I mean, it was summer, but it's still cold. It's like the Arctic.
Yeah.
We stopped the icebreaker ship and people were like, we're going to do the Arctic dip, which is where you just jump into the Arctic water.
Oh my god.
I was like, okay, I am not doing that. I'm not participating. This was like early on, like the second or third day. And so I was like sitting by myself, and then someone came up to me and he just said, "Are you living?" And I was like, I guess, like, I'm alive. And then I really thought about it, and then I was like, no, I'm not living. Like, I'm not taking this amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and really going through with it. So then I ended up getting into my swimsuit and jumping off the ship. And it's a tall ship, and I don't do cliff jumping or anything like that for fun. So it was definitely a terrifying experience, but when I emerged out of the water, I almost felt like baptized by these Arctic waters, you could say, and I felt like a new person, and it was truly one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a really nice response, actually. Like,
there should be a movie about that.
Yeah, I should check out that someday.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
And
crazy how 3 words can have so much meaning. Are
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
lit-
it's crazy. It's crazy.
And I mean, you kind of mentioned that already, but did that, like, to what degree did it change you in like specific ways, and if it did at all impact your inventions?
I think it just made me more open to opportunities that came up if they scared me. And I feel like the biggest lesson I've learned so far in my life is doing the things that are outside of my comfort zone or my box of comfort are always the things that I learn the most from. So when I push myself to do things I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
So that's something I try and keep in mind, I guess. And for inventing, just seeing the amount of unfortunate pollution and garbage accumulation, even in the Arctic, kind of pushed me to want to keep trying to make some sort of difference that way through my inventing. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. So we heard that you're a little bit of a film geek. So yeah, hell yeah. I think all 3 here are a bit of a film geeks. So we wanted to ask you, is there any specific film or just movie in general that inspired you or that made you the way you are?
Oh, I have so many movies like that. I think when I was a kid, the one movie that really influenced me when I was growing up, it was called, I had this really tiny iPod Nano that was like a square size, so you could see like movies on it. I don't know if you remember those.
I think I have mine here.
Yeah, I lost mine. I'm really sad. It was one of the better things that Apple made before Steve Jobs died. And my dad put this movie on my iPod called The Tales of Hoffmann, which is from 1951. And it's from the opera The Tales of Hoffmann. They converted it into this English movie back in the day. And it's visually just an astounding film. It's one of the movies that Martin Scorsese watched as a kid and said, like, that really influenced him to want to make movies too. And his film foundation recently restored the film to 4K quality, and it's just like a stunning piece of art. So I think that, at least in my growing up experience, that kind of fantasticalism, it's like very much these very elaborate, colorful sets and almost magical feeling, like practical effects versus like all the digital effects we have nowadays. It's just like this wonderful film. A more recent film that has that vibe but in a very different style is Terry Gilliam's film from 1989 or 87. I think it's 89, which is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which I watched recently and just fell in love with. I really love like films with practical effects that are very over the top, fantastical, in another world, but maybe could potentially be on Earth, just in a different realm that we as adults have shut off in our very practical life. I just love escapism, I guess, and films like that always do it for me.
That feeling of like, wow, that's so unique and fantastic and otherworldly, but I think I can feel it like as if it was in front of me.
Exactly.
Yeah, magical. The best thing about films.
Yeah, one of the films that kind of resonates with me with what you kind of described is Fantasia, which, I mean, it's obviously animated, but I feel like it kind of gives off the same kind of element of just wonder and like adventure and so much creativity. and you can just like feel it completely with the music.
I loved Fantasia when I was a kid. That was one of the films we had on Laserdisc, so I would watch that when I was growing up. I loved Fantasia. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
super nice.
Film is just great.
Yeah.
So kind of leading on with that, film, does it have any influence on your creative process and your inventing? Because I mean, it does sound kind of like it explores your creativity, but does it have any specific like input on it?
I'm not quite sure what it has on inventing. For me, I think in general, I'm just really inspired by creative people like Charlie Chaplin or Mel Brooks, people like that wrote, directed, filmed, produced, even made the music for their movies. I just love people like that. And kind of their work inspires me in my own creative work, as I'm starting to do a lot of writing of like film script ideas that I have now and taking a different turn temporarily. So yeah, I don't know how quite I think just like people that stood their ground, did something that was very uniquely them, that everyone probably thought they were crazy when they were making it, and made something fantastical that inspired other people. It's just something I'd like to do in my life, no matter what area of work I do.
Yeah, and kind of with what you said about you moving on a little bit for a while on writing scripts and stuff, kind of on off tangent here, but would you actually like to move into the film industry in a certain way?
Well, from what I've experienced and seen of the film industry, it's probably just as slimy as the entrepreneur one.
I think
but I have wanted to do it since I was a kid, so I decided it's best to not wait anymore and just try doing it. So yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, necessarily you don't have to go into Hollywood. Like now, technology is so advanced that you can make a film in your backyard.
Yeah,
also very true. Yeah.
I mean, film is kind of like, if you want to make it to the Oscars, it's kind of got to be more Hollywood based, but there's definitely other outlets, and I think if you kind of implement your creativity into that world, it could be something very interesting. So, I mean, I would be very interested to see what you make in the future.
Thanks, I'm excited.
So now, how did you manage so much attention and pressure at such a young age? Like, it must be like overwhelming having like so much attention so fast, like as you said, like it was this thing that suddenly became so like known all around the world. So how did you manage the stress and attention that came from that?
I don't know. I think I was just very lucky to have parents that kept me very grounded, and friends who also kept me grounded. And I don't know, it was just, I kind of just took things as they came. I mean, interviews, honestly, when I was doing press for the Flashlight back when I was 16, interviews got pretty boring and repetitive because they'd always just ask the same sliver of questions each time. And they were much more interested in what I wanted to do in university, which just had to be engineering, because they couldn't fathom a girl being interested in both the arts and sciences. It was kind of, it was an interesting experience. And if anything, all the film crews that came to my house to film me, I just got even more interested in film production through that than the fact that they came to film me. So it's been a fun ride, but I've met so many wonderful, inspiring, creative people through all of this and speaking at conferences and events that I never dreamed anyone. I'm always like, why am I here? Like, I'm like the least qualified person to speak to all these people. So I've always been very, very lucky and very, very grateful for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how we feel right now talking to you. I forgot what I was going to say.
Damn. Well, we can move on to our next question. So 3 future goals in your work. Like, do you have anything planned, like 3 big things, or just in general?
3 goals for my work in the future. I want to direct a film. I want to direct a documentary, and I want to write a lot of funny scripts. And I'd like to host a show and do something like that as well. I don't know in what capacity, what kind of show. Maybe something about art and science, or like half Asian cool people, or whatever it is. I feel like there's something there, and I'd like to do something like that. I don't know. I have a lot of different goals. Those are just the ones that off the top of my head currently.
Well, really interesting.
I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds something like film is really kind of your main thing you're looking forward to in the future. It sounds like it's kind of your way to go.
Thanks. I mean, I have a lot of different interests. I do want to have a balance of science and art in my life. But right now I'm kind of this past few months I've been kind of at an interesting transition point, trying to figure out what exactly it is that I want to spend my time on. Because I feel like I spent my time doing a lot of things I was half interested in, but nothing that I was extremely passionate about and dying to do. So this next couple years, I only want to do things that I'm dying to do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfectly.
So obviously it's kind of still a shock to the system that you're on the Creekcast with our 40 listeners. But most of our audience, or the people that we on a day-to-day basis kind of have interactions with, are ultimately young adults, which are at the age in which you kind of started off your whole inventive and entrepreneurship process. So what message would you like to give to young adults who don't even know where to start, what they're looking for into their careers, what they're going to study, what they want to do with their lives?
Oh gosh, good question. The one advice I would give is just try as many new things as possible and find out what you really hate spending your time on and what you really love doing. And also just in general, think about what you end up doing most of the time when you're not at school or at your job. Like, what do you instantly gravitate towards spending your time on? And is there any possible way you can make that your job? Because I think at the end of the day, you want to spend, if you're going to work on something your whole life, it better be something that you're at least mildly excited about. If you're lucky enough to do that. So that's kind of my main suggestion. And try to see how what you want to spend your time on, how it can hopefully just inspire other people to also follow their passions, no matter what area it may be in.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice. I actually hadn't thought about, like, after school, what you gravitate towards.
We tend to focus on, we in university, and that's done. Life's fixed.
Boom.
No problems. Done. So I think we need to.
I mean, 80% of learning happens outside of the classroom, which I think was a really number.
Definitely.
So it's like, okay, so like, what are we doing? What are kids doing after school? Because I feel like that's way more interesting. Yeah,
and it's also, I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but it's kind of part of the problem, which ends up being like you spend all these hours in school, which things you aren't invested in, and you don't really get to know yourself and your interests, which might happen to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. So hopefully the educational system will figure it out soon.
I think we actually talked about this, like our last episode on the Green School special. To everyone listening, give it a listen. It's out now. We didn't need the listens, just a little thing, like don't know if you know, but the profits that we make from this go to the week's organization, like charity. So like we don't keep any of the money. Don't think that we make you come here because we want money. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're
no.
trying to give it where it's needed.
We're
Right
trying to
now,
make a change.
yeah, like emphasis on trying. Like we have what, $1?
Yeah, but it'll come to fruition eventually.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Our last question for you on today's podcast is: what kind of mark do you want to leave in this world? What do you want to be your legacy?
Gosh, that's such a heavy question. I don't even know. I think whatever I end up pursuing in my life or end up doing that people will hear about, I'm sure, hopefully at some point. I hope it's something that just excites them and inspires them to also follow their own passions, and to feel proud about whatever they love. And hopefully, whatever I make inspires other people just to be kinder to each other and also to the planet.
Yeah, that's a great legacy to leave behind.
A noble legacy.
But I have yet to leave behind, so we have to get back to work. And
with that concludes episode 9.
8.
9. It's so many, I can't keep track.
So many.
Really a big thank you for coming on. I mean, it's an honor to even, like, when I received the email, it was like, what? What's going on here?
Like, what?
Thanks for thinking of me and reaching out. I appreciate it. And all the best with your podcast and future episodes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And all the best to you in all your goals and ambitions, whether it be film or inventing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So this has been the 8th episode. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on our Instagram to keep you updated on all new episodes. And yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, guys.